You ever seen somebody shine so bright it make the darkness nervous? Yeah, that's how it was with her. They called her Lil Zuri, 10 years old, black as midnight, eyes full of fire. She ain't have much, but what she had was a gift. A gift that was about to shake a billionaire's world to its core. Stay with me, 'cause what happens next gonna leave your soul wide open. And if you believe every child deserves a chance, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. Zuri sat under that old flickering streetlight, piece of chalk in one hand, a dream in the other. Around her, neighborhood kids listened close, like she was preaching gospel straight from a tattered book. Zuri said softly, "Say it with me, we faith." And the kids shouted back, "Faith!" Meanwhile, up on the hill, billionaire Harrison Langston lived behind marble gates in silence. He built an empire from nothing, but somewhere on that climb, he lost his soul. He had one daughter, Asha, sweet, curious, lonely. That night, while her father hosted another fancy dinner, Asha slipped away, following that glow down the hill and straight to Zuri's light. Two worlds met under that street lamp, one dripping in wealth, one dressed in hope, and that's where the story truly begins. Langston saw his daughter sitting cross-legged on cracked pavement. Embarrassment flared. "Asha, get in the car." But Zuri, little unshaken, looked him dead in the eyes and said, "She just learning, sir, we all are." That moment hit him like thunder. Still, pride made him walk away. But that night, he couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in the quiet. Next morning, he went back. No suit, no cameras. Just a man trying to remember who he used to be. Langston asked, "What's your name?" Zuri smiled. "Zuri means beautiful. My mama gave it to me." She told him how she taught kids every evening. He listened, really listened, for the first time in years. Days later, he made a call. Build a community center right there for kids like her. He didn't tell nobody. He just acted. But life don't hand out blessings easy. Fire struck the shelter where Zuri lived. She lost everything, even her mama's photo. Langston found her standing barefoot in the ashes. Zuri whispered, "It's okay, I still got faith." And right there, the billionaire realized. He wasn't saving her, she was saving him. If this story already touching your spirit, go on, like, subscribe, and share this message with somebody who need hope tonight. Langston moved Zuri and her aunt into a new home. Asha and Zuri became sisters in every way that mattered. He spent his days at the construction site, the Langston Learning House, right where that street lamp once stood. First brick carved with one word, faith. On opening day, the crowd gathered. Langston took the stage. When I met Zuri, I thought I was the teacher, but she was the lesson. Zuri wiped her tears, smiled, and said, "You didn't just help me, you helped everybody." Years later, the center still stood. A statue of a little black girl with chalk in her hand, and a plaque that read, "In honor of Zuri, the girl who taught us all." Sometimes God don't send angels in white robes. Sometimes he sends them wearing hand-me-downs, holding chalk. If you ever doubt your worth, remember Lil Zuri, and let your light keep burning, even when the world tries to turn it off. This story ain't fiction. It's a reminder. Faith can move more than mountains, it can move hearts. They say sometimes God don't send lessons in thunder or gold. Sometimes he sends them small, like a little girl with a piece of chalk. And for Harrison Langston, that little girl named Zuri Mayfield became a mirror he couldn't look away from. That night he sat in his study, big oak desk, walls lined with trophies of a life well lived on paper, but empty in spirit. He turned off his phone, leaned back and whispered to himself, "What happened to me?" He remembered how he started. A kid from the same streets, mama working 2 jobs, him studying by candlelight. Back then he promised he'd never forget where he came from. But success got loud, and pride got comfortable. Zuri's words had cracked open something deep inside him. Next morning, before sunrise, he pulled up at that street again. Hoodie on, no driver, no press. Zuri was already there, knees on the ground drawing circles with her chalk. "You're up early," he said. Zuri smiled. The light's better before the sun gets too high. It's when the world's still quiet enough to listen. He watched her, amazed at how simple her joy was. He asked, "What do you dream about, Zuri?" She didn't even look up. A classroom with walls that don't leak when it rains. Books that ain't tore up. A place where kids like us can learn and not be scared of being laughed at. Harrison nodded slow. He hadn't felt this still in years. He said, "Why no, what if you had that, a real place, safe, bright, yours?" She looked up, skeptical but hopeful. "Ain't nobody building schools round here, sir." He smiled faintly. Maybe somebody should. That was the moment the seed was planted. Small, quiet, but full of promise. Later that day, back in his penthouse office, Harrison called his assistant. "Find me an architect. I want to build a community center. Right here, 5th and Green, for kids like Zuri." The assistant paused, surprised. "Sir, that area is not ideal. We'd have to clear permits, talk to the city. Do it and keep it quiet, no press, no photo ops. I'm not doing this for headlines." The assistant nodded. And for the first time in a long time, Harrison felt like he was building something that actually mattered. Meanwhile, word about the chalk teacher spread through the block. More kids started coming. Zuri taught reading, numbers, kindness, all with that same broken chalk and open heart. Even grown folks stopped by to listen sometimes. She had that gift, making people believe again. And one afternoon, Asha came back, this time with a backpack full of books. "Daddy said I could bring these for you." "Thank you, you really didn't have to." "I wanted to. We can teach together." That's how it started. 2 little girls from 2 different worlds, one teaching the other that love don't know class or status. But not everyone liked what they saw. Across the street, some folks whispered, "Why that rich man's daughter sitting with them street kids? She gon' get dirty." And others rolled their eyes, thinking it was all some charity stunt. But Zuri didn't care. She just kept teaching, 'cause she knew real change don't need approval, it just needs heart. That evening, Harrison showed up again. No security, no noise. He watched from his car as Asha and Zuri laughed under the streetlight, drawing a giant heart on the ground. Inside that heart, they wrote one word, hope. And Harrison smiled. He whispered, "You really are something special, kid." He didn't know. The world was about to test just how strong that hope really was. A few nights later, rain came hard. Thunder crashing, streets flooding. Zuri and her aunt huddled in their tiny shelter, trying to stay dry. The roof leaked, wind howled. Zuri held on to her mama's old photo, whispering a prayer. Then a spark, a flicker, a flame. The power line outside snapped, catching the corner of the shelter. Within seconds, the place was on fire. Zuri screamed for her aunt. Neighbors rushed out, trying to throw water, breaking down doors. But the flames climbed fast. By the time firefighters arrived, it was too late. Zuri's aunt made it out, barely. Zuri stood barefoot in the rain, watching her home turn to ash. Next morning, Harrison's phone rang. "Sir, there's been a fire. That little girl, Zuri, she lost everything." The world around him went quiet. He dropped his pen, stood up slow. No meeting mattered anymore. He drove straight down to 5th and Green. The scene broke him. Soot on the ground, ashes floating through the air like lost prayers. And there she was, Zuri, standing in the middle of it all, clutching a piece of burned chalk. He walked over, his shoes sinking into mud, kneeled beside her. "Zuri, I'm so sorry." "It's okay, sir, I still got faith." That sentence hit him harder than any business loss ever could. She had nothing left, not a home, not her things. But she still had faith. He swallowed hard, tears in his eyes. "Come with me, you and your aunt. I'll take care of everything." "We don't want charity." "It ain't charity, Zuri, it's a promise." That night, Harrison put Zuri and her aunt in one of his guest homes. Warm, clean, filled with books and food. Zuri couldn't stop looking around. "It's so big. You deserve it." And for the first time since the fire, Zuri smiled. A real full smile. Harrison stood in the doorway, watching them. And in that moment, he knew what he had to do next. He'd build that community center faster, not for publicity, not for praise, but because Zuri reminded him what success was supposed to mean. Sometimes it takes losing everything to remind you what truly matters. For Zuri, that fire didn't destroy her dream, it purified it. And for Harrison Langston, it didn't just reopen his heart, it rebirthed his purpose. But the story ain't done yet, because the day the new learning house opened, a secret from Zuri's past would surface, one that would test every bit of faith they both had left. They say when you start walking in truth, the world will test you just to see if you mean it. For Harrison Langston, the test was coming, and it wouldn't just shake his empire. It would test his heart and his faith. Over the next few weeks, something began to shift. Every Saturday, the Langston Mansion gates opened wide, and a group of kids from the downtown shelter walked in, their eyes wide with wonder. They called it the Streetlight School. Zuri stood at the front of the library, a chalkboard behind her, her voice confident and kind. Asha sat right beside her, learning and helping. And Harrison, He watched from the doorway, quiet but proud, the sound of children's laughter filling a space that had long felt hollow. He funded books, meals, and tutors, but he didn't call it charity. He called it community. And word spread fast. Social media buzzed. People called it beautiful. Some called it foolish. But to Harrison, it felt like peace. For the first time since his wife passed, his home was filled with light again. But not everyone was happy. Inside the glossy offices of Langston Enterprises, board members gathered like vultures around a gold table. "Has anyone spoken to Harrison lately?" asked Mr. Denton. "He's been busy turning his mansion into a daycare," another man sneered. "He's losing focus," said a woman in pearls. "Investors are calling. They're nervous. This image of him playing philanthropist, it's hurting the brand." The COO leaned forward. "Then we'll have to intervene." One morning, Harrison arrived at the office to find the mood colder than usual. His assistant, nervous, handed him a folder. "What's this?" he asked. "It's the board's petition to remove you as CEO." Harrison froze. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. Inside were signatures, legal documents, and accusations. "Negligence of duty, misuse of company resources, reputational risk." He looked up, disbelief written all over his face. "Reputational risk for teaching children? They're saying your personal actions are distracting from company priorities." Harrison's voice hardened. "My personal actions are feeding and educating our community's children." The assistant lowered her eyes. "Sir, they've called an emergency meeting tonight." That night, the boardroom lights glared harshly on polished marble. Harrison sat at the head of the table, his empire behind him, his conviction before him. "Mr. Langston," the COO began, "we respect your humanitarian passion, but this company's success is built on focus, not feelings." Harrison folded his hands. "Focus without purpose is greed." A few members shifted uncomfortably. "Do you understand what you're risking?" Denton asked. "Shareholder trust, investor relations, public image." "Public image?" Harrison interrupted, leaning forward. "You mean the image of a black man who climbed from nothing and forgot where he came from? Because that's the one I've been living for too long." The room went silent. "I'm not ashamed of what I'm doing," he continued. "If teaching children to dream again costs me a title, then maybe I don't deserve the title." They voted that night. Unanimously, he was out. By morning, the news broke. Langston removed as CEO of his own company. Philanthropy gone too far? Reporters swarmed his gate. Camera flashes popped like lightning. Through it all, Harrison stayed silent. He walked outside only once to meet Zuri, who stood at the gate, eyes wide with worry. "Mr. Langston," she whispered, "they said you lost your job." He nodded. "They took the title, but not the mission." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's my fault, ain't it?" He knelt down, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Zuri, don't you ever say that again. You showed me what matters. You gave me back my heart." She sniffled, nodding. "So what we gonna do now?" He smiled softly. "We gonna keep teaching, baby girl. They can take the name off a building, but they can't take the purpose out of it." That night, tragedy struck. A fire broke out near the downtown shelter. A short circuit, they said. By the time firefighters arrived, half the building was gone. Dozens were displaced, children crying, smoke rising high into the cold night sky. When Harrison heard the news, he didn't hesitate. He jumped into his car and drove straight to the scene. Through the chaos and sirens, he saw her, Zuri, clutching two toddlers, coughing through the smoke. He ran to her, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaking through soot. "The books, the notebooks, everything's gone." Harrison held her close. Things can be rebuilt, people can't. And right there under the glow of emergency lights, Harrison made a vow that would change everything. He told Zuri, "We're going to build something new. Not just for you, but for every child like you. A place that never closes, a place of light." Zuri blinked up at him. "Like a school?" He nodded. "Better, a movement." Weeks passed. The media moved on. But Harrison didn't. He sold one of his properties, a massive old warehouse downtown. He gathered volunteers, architects, and educators. Zuri and Asha painted signs, swept floors, stacked books. Word spread fast, and families, churches, and old neighborhood folks pitched in. And within months, the warehouse became something new, the Langston Learning Center. A place where no one paid tuition, where no one got turned away, where kids like Zuri could shine their light freely. The grand opening was simple. No suits, no spotlights, just a banner and a crowd full of joy. Zuri stood beside Harrison on a small stage. He handed her a microphone. "This is your dream, Zuri. Say a few words." She froze, nervous at first, and then took a deep breath. "My mama used to tell me," she began, "that being poor don't mean being powerless. It just means you still got something to fight for." The crowd murmured in agreement. I started teaching on the street because I didn't want kids to forget that. And then Mr. Langston showed up, not as a billionaire, but as somebody who listened. She turned to him and smiled. "You reminded me that good people still care, and I reminded you that hope don't die easy." Applause thundered. Tears glistened in eyes across the room. Harrison hugged her tight. "I didn't help you, Zuri," he whispered. "You helped me." Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, Asha and Zuri stood outside the new building. "Daddy's different now," Asha said. "He laughs more." Zuri grinned. "That's 'cause he finally found his light again." They watched as the sign above the entrance flickered on. "The Streetlight Academy. Let your light shine, even in the dark," Zuri whispered. "Just like where it all started." Asha nodded. Under a streetlight. Harrison watched them from the doorway. Two young black girls standing side by side, full of promise, under a sign built from their courage. And in that moment, he understood something deeper than success or loss. The mansion, the money, the business, none of it compared to this. Because this wasn't about wealth, it was about legacy. But just when peace seemed to settle, a shadow lingered. The old board members had a plan, and they weren't done with Harrison Langston. Because when one man dares to change the system always fights back. They say every light it casts a shadow, and when a man dares to shine too bright, the world will try to dim him. For Harrison Langston, the light of his new purpose was just beginning to spread. But so was the darkness waiting to swallow it whole. Months passed since the Streetlight Academy opened its doors. Every morning the laughter of children echoed through those renovated walls, a symphony of second chances. Harrison's hair had grayed a little, his hands rough from building rather than boardrooms. But his spirit, stronger than ever. Zuri had become the Academy's youngest teacher's aide, sharp, determined, radiant. Asha called her my big sister. Life was finding rhythm again. Until one afternoon, as Harrison was teaching math to a group of kids, a black car pulled up outside the academy. Out stepped Denton, the same man who led the coup that took everything from him. He smiled thinly. Well, the great Harrison Langston teaching fractions to street kids, quite the demotion. Harrison stayed calm. "What do you want, Denton?" The man held up an envelope. "A warning. You're being sued. The board claims you used company funds to start this little charity of yours. We're coming for the building, the land, and whatever's left of your reputation." The room went quiet. Zuri froze in the doorway, her small hands trembling. "You can't take this," she whispered. "This place ain't yours." Denton chuckled. "The law disagrees, sweetheart." Harrison stood tall, voice steady. "Then we'll fight you in court." Denton smirked. "You'll lose, Harrison. You always do when you care too much." He turned and walked away. But what he didn't know was that caring too much had already made Harrison unbeatable. Days turned into weeks. The lawsuit drained what little savings Harrison had left. Reporters returned, not for inspiration this time, but for scandal. They called him reckless, a fallen idol. A billionaire gone broke over a lost cause. Donations slowed. Bills piled up. The Academy's heating was shut off one cold December night. Still, Harrison refused to close the doors. He told the kids, "We'll learn in coats if we have to. As long as we got each other, this place stays open." Zuri rallied the children. They brought old blankets, candles, snacks from home. She started tutoring younger kids by flashlight, just like the day Harrison met her, under a streetlight of her own making. One evening, Harrison found her sitting alone, staring at the dark classroom. "You okay, baby girl?" he asked gently. She nodded, wiping tears. "I just don't want them to win." He knelt beside her. "They already lost, Zuri, because they'll never understand what love can build." The courthouse was packed. Media, investors, community members, everyone wanted to see what would become of the fallen billionaire. On one side, corporate lawyers in sharp suits led by Denton. On the other, Harrison Langston representing himself. The judge entered. Silence fell. Denton began. Your Honor, the defendant misused corporate funds for personal philanthropy, violating fiduciary duty. He's tarnished the Langston brand. Harrison stood. Your Honor, I used my own post-severance pay, money I earned, to build a place that gives back to the city that built me. Denton smirked. And your evidence? Harrison placed a folder on the table. Receipts, bank transfers, everything accounted for. But then, a surprise witness stood up from the gallery. It was Zuri. Your Honor, she said nervously, can I say something? The judge hesitated. Young lady, are you? She's with me, Harrison said softly. The judge nodded. Go ahead. Zuri stepped forward. I don't know nothing about business or boards, she said, voice trembling. But I know what Mr. Langston did for us. He didn't buy us toys or clothes. He bought us hope. She glanced back at the crowd. Before him, I was teaching under a streetlight. Nobody cared, but he did. And if that's wrong, then maybe the law needs fixin', not him. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Denton's smirk faltered. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Langston, I'll review the financials, but I must say, this young lady's testimony speaks volumes. 2 days later, the verdict came in. The court ruled in Harrison's favor. The academy would remain his property, free of corporate claim. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions. But Harrison only said one thing. This isn't a victory for me. It's a victory for every child who ever thought they didn't matter. Zuri hugged him tight. Told you we'd win. He smiled. You were right again, teacher. The story went viral. Headlines across the country read, Billionaire turned teacher wins case to keep free school for kids. Zuri's testimony melts America's heart. Donations poured in from all over. Celebrities, athletes, churches, even some of Harrison's old business rivals contributed. The Streetlight Academy expanded to 3 new locations across the state. Zuri, now 13, became the youth ambassador for the foundation. Asha helped her dad design scholarship programs. And one day, during an interview, a journalist asked Harrison, Mr. Langston, do you ever regret leaving the corporate world? He smiled gently. I didn't leave it, I just stopped serving it. Now I serve something bigger, humanity. One quiet evening, Harrison sat on the academy's rooftop watching the sunset. Zuri joined him carrying 2 cups of cocoa. What you thinking about? She asked. He smiled faintly. Your mama, she'd be proud of you. Zuri blinked, surprised. You knew my mama? He nodded slowly. Years ago, she worked at one of my company's factories, always stood up for others. I didn't know she passed until I found you that day. Zuri's eyes filled with tears. She used to talk about some rich man who never looked down on her. Said one day he'd see what real strength looks like. Harrison's throat tightened. She was right. They sat in silence watching the city lights flicker, tiny stars in the dark. Years passed. The Streetlight Foundation grew into a national movement, mentoring thousands of children across the country. Zuri graduated high school early, then college, then came back, not as a student but as director of education. Harrison, now older and slower, watched her from the sidelines with quiet pride. One day as they walked through the halls, Zuri said, You know, Mr. Langston, you gave me a future. He chuckled softly. No, baby girl, you gave me one. She smiled. Still can't believe you call me baby girl after all these years. He winked. You'll always be that little teacher under the streetlight to me. Winter came heavy one year. Snow blanketed the city in silence. Harrison's health began to fade. He spent more time in his office at the academy, surrounded by photos, Zuri's first day, Asha's drawings, smiling faces of hundreds of children whose lives had changed. One night, Zuri came to see him. He looked weak but peaceful. Come sit, he said softly. She sat beside him, holding his hand. Promise me something, he whispered. Promise you'll keep the light burning, even when I'm gone. Tears filled her eyes. I promise. He smiled faintly. Then I can rest easy. That night, Harrison Langston passed away in his sleep. A billionaire who found his true wealth in hearts, not numbers. A year later, thousands gathered outside the academy for the unveiling of a new plaque. Zuri stood at the podium, older now, confident, glowing. Behind her hung a portrait of Harrison Langston, smiling, strong, alive forever in spirit. She began to speak. When I first met Mr. Langston, I was just a girl teaching math under a streetlight. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself. She paused, smiling through tears. He taught me that being rich ain't about what you have. It's about what you give, and he gave us everything. The crowd erupted in applause. Asha stepped forward and unveiled the plaque. It read, "The Harrison Langston Streetlight Academy, founded on faith, fueled by love, forever a beacon of hope." As the crowd cheered, Zuri whispered quietly to herself, "Rest easy, Mr. Langston, the light's still shining." And somewhere in the heart of that city, under a quiet streetlight that started it all, a little girl's dream and a man's redemption still glowed against the dark. Because real wealth isn't what you hold, it's what you lift.